I think we are live, Sue.
That would be great if we are live and everybody can see and hear us and we can go ahead.
You are one of the people I wanted to interview in my series of
Oh, it says
interviewing.
live. Okay, yeah, all right. Sorry.
Yeah,
Pardon me.
that's okay. There's a little bit of a lag on the YouTube side, about 30 seconds or so, I
Yep,
think.
that makes sense.
But you're one of those people. I've got like I don't know, maybe 40 interviews. I have a playlist that has it's called interviews with interesting people.
Okay.
And when I saw your channel a few months ago, I was like, oh, I gotta talk to her. And so these interviews are kind of selfish on my part because I just want to get to know you guys. Like when I people ask me why, I'm a design build contractor, right? And most of the content on my channel is design build oriented, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's like ninety
Fabulous
percent
stuff.
But I love interviewing people, so I do have that playlist, and people were asking me why did you want to interview Lou Elizondo? I was like, I just wanted to talk to the guy.
Yeah, I
So
found him
what's wrong with
interesting.
that?
Sure, right. Yeah.
I'm not a journalist or anything, but I think it's just like you. When I saw your channel and I started watching your content, I thought, what an interesting person. So I wanted to share my interest of you with my viewers, and I
Sure.
just think that's cool to get outside of the box every now and then, and get out of our little norm that we're in, you know.
Understand.
And so, if you don't mind, could you give
No,
people
don't mind a bit.
an introduction of yourself?
For me to give an introduction of myself? Gosh. Okay. Well, if you hear somebody kibitzing from the background, that would be the mystery man, my spouse,
Oh,
also part of the author of the book Inviting E.T. So, one, we are authors. Two, I've been a professional clairvoyant and medical intuitive that's worked for three-letter agencies across the United States since 1990, 1991, so 30 plus years. And three-letter agencies would contact me for murder and missing person cases because I was able to pick up extreme detail. I'm an artist now and picked up portrait art about 5 years ago, and we'll explain that in a little bit. But when I met my spouse, we were at a traditional Native American event in central Iowa, and he came up from New Mexico to attend this event, and we clicked and got along. But the first time I came to his home in New Mexico in 2013, it was September, something really strange happened that I did not expect. And I'd been here 10 days ish. And we were watching TV one night and happened to be watching one of the Got Talent sort of shows. And it was the finals week. And our favorite performer, Otter's and mine, had just finished doing his performance. And I turned to Otter and I said, gosh, he was really good. I think he should win. And something really, really strange happened. A male voice that I had never heard before popped up in my head.
And it wasn't me.
And it wasn't him. That's right. And spoke and said he really was good. I think he should win. And without knowing why, how, who, anything, my head whipped around and I stared out the picture window. And across the valley, we live in the Albuquerque greater metropolitan area. Across the valley from us, 10 miles to the east, is one big mountain chain called the Sandia Mountain. And without knowing how or the particulars of it, I knew that this male voice that had popped up in my head was coming from inside the mountain. And I thought, what is going on? And I'd been doing paranormal research at that point in time for 25 years. And I had done ghost busting. I had done paranormal research in all kinds of areas. And so had Otter. And I thought, this isn't a ghost. This isn't a spirit. This isn't negative. What is this? The next day, I heard it again, same male voice. The third day, I heard it again. And finally, I thought, maybe I better ask my spouse, or who I was dating at the time. And so I turned to Otter and I said, Otter, you ever hear a voice coming from the mountain? I keep hearing this guy. And he went, oh, them. I've been hearing them ever since I moved in 2009. Why? And so he and I talked about it. I started listening to this voice from the mountain, but I hated to keep calling it the voice from the mountain. I thought that was kind of dumb. So I gave it a nickname. It came from the Sandia Mountain, so I thought that sounded like a name and decided I'd call it Sandia. And the minute I turned to Otter and said, I'm going to give the voice from the mountain a nickname, I think I'm going to call it Sandia. The voice from the mountain was listening, and he piped up immediately. He said, Sandia, eh? And I had forgotten that in Spanish, Sandia means watermelon. And he said, watermelon head, that'll work. I didn't get it at the time, but the more I talked to this guy while I was at Otter's home, the more I thought, he doesn't sound like he's from here. And when I went back to Iowa, where I lived at the time, I didn't hear the voice anymore. When I came back over Thanksgiving to spend the holidays with Otter, immediately the voice started talking again.
But at this point in your life, you already knew you were clairvoyant, right?
I did, and I'd had more than 2 decades of a professional career, and that's all I had done. So my paranormal research runs the gamut, and so did Otter's. And so both of us kind of figured out that Sandia probably wasn't from here, but I didn't stop and ask him what his real name was or where home was until I'd come back for the Thanksgiving holidays. And when I did ask him, he piped up immediately and he answered in detail. And he said, my real name is Tilcum. And I said, what? And he said, Tilcum. And I said, slower. And he went, Tilcum. And I said, Tilcum. Tealcome. Tilcum. And he indicated that would work, but then he spelled it Tlkm. And he said, our language seldom uses vowels unless they are borrowed. And I said, so where's home? He said, home is the 5th planet orbiting the further of the 2 stars of the binary system you call Zeta Reticuli, in the constellation of Reticulum, which is a southern hemisphere constellation difficult for you to see from here. Okay.
Yeah, no shit.
And so we really just started learning, just started conversing with Tilcum or Sandia, because we interchanged the 2 names by then, until, for about a year.
Had you been involved with ufology before that, or
not a bit? Although I had been an experiencer when I was 3.5 to 4 at my grandmother's house by Niagara Falls in upstate New York. I remember waking up and watching a reptilian walk through a wall. And it scared me so bad about age 4 that I never forgot it. And then I remember being an elementary school girl and having to close the closet door because the little short gray guys with the large eyes always came through the closet. So I'd been an experiencer before, but it wasn't until 1998 that I had, within 10 days, 2 different extraterrestrial nations show up in my bedroom. And I was not married to Otter at the time. I was married to a spouse in Iowa. And the first individual that showed up was very tall, very skinny, creamy colored skin, no clothing. His head almost brushed the ceiling, so he was about 8 foot tall. He had large, dark eyes and a large head and long, skinny limbs. And when he reached out to try and touch me as my feet were under the covers, I sat up in bed because I'd been watching him since he arrived and just staying real still and going, what the heck is going on here? And when I sat up in bed, I yelled at him. And I said, what are you doing here? And he turned and he bolted through the wall. And then 10 days later, I had 4 small gray people with very large eyes show up at the bottom of my bed. And
Yeah, I want to know why they
So-
do that, because they could do it in a lot. That's one thing. That was one question I was going to ask you.
yeah.
Why do they have to do it in a scary way? Why can't they just take
Okay.
a cab to your house?
Right. Well, all right. So, like anything that you or I do in life and that we're working for somebody else, they had their own protocols to follow. And we didn't find out for a little while what those protocols were until Tilcom told us. And he said, the first thing is cause no fear. We're not supposed to cause the people that are sentient and indigenous to this world fear. Do no harm was the second part of the protocol. And then third was leave no trace. So those were the 3 things that he told
They
me.
left out "don't scare to death."
Right. So they usually try, because they're a telepathic nation. That's why I heard him all the way from the mountain. But when I conversed with Sandia, it's not like hearing just words in your head. Telepathy is more like feeling what they feel, hearing what they want you to hear, seeing visual images and detail rapid fire, and sometimes getting history and other people involved associated with whatever you're talking about. So it's kind of like a download of a chunk of information all at the same time. It can tire your brain out.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
it's
didn't
kind
mean
of
to
like
interrupt
the
you.
old crank flip movies that were in the arcades years ago when I was a kid. They were like nickel slots, and they were
You turn the crank and you
started
flip
turning
it.
the crank, and they
Oh,
flipped
like
all
the-
these
like the-
cards forward.
Like the
showing
frames per
you
second
kinda
is
like a
slower,
movie.
but
Yes.
they're still
Right.
but they're
Right,
still
right,
flashing
right.
images. There's a fella in the chat asking for more physical detail on the being, and I know
Okay,
you've
Tilcom?
been
Yeah.
you've been in contact with many, right? So
I have. It was only Tilcom for the first about year and a half, and so Tilcom is about 4.5 feet tall, large head, large eyes. Their eyes have 2 eyelids. One is very dark, black, and that's what we normally see. And then when they retract that, their eyes look very similar to ours, only with larger colored part of the eye, larger irises, and pretty much all the colors that our eyes have, including purple and amber. Those are the 2 that we don't see in our population very often. 4 fingers. 4 toes.
I meant to mention to people that Otter, your husband, is next to you. That's the person that you're hearing.
Yes, and if you see me pointing this way, I'm pointing to the mystery man. If you see me pointing this way, I'm pointing out my picture window toward the Sandia Mountain and toward
Now,
the
notice that it said Reverend Otter. So is he still?
You got to be on cue.
It's Reverend Otter, right?
Reverend White Otter.
Reverend White Otter.
So did he preach for a while, or?
He acquired his minister's license to be able to marry people rather than preach, but he has taught shamanism and studied shamanism
Crystal healing.
for 35 years, something like
Almost
that.
40 now.
Yep. So he's a non-standard, not Christian minister, but
Non-denominational.
Non-denominational would be an accurate way to say it. Correct.
That's interesting. So I guess my question now, some of my questions. First of all, I'm not a skeptic. I want you to know, okay? Because
Sure.
I've had my own experiences since I was a teenager. Okay,
Oh, you have? Oh, good.
not the same way that you have, but I'm saying enough to make me question things. Okay, so um, so I'm not a skeptic, but I know I'm going to get questions about the beings. Why don't we see like more? Why do they not want us to have images of them? I guess that's a good question because
Oh,
I
all
know
right. All
some of the
right.
skeptics are going to say, "Why don't you have photographs of these beings?" You know.
All right.
Oh,
We
you
have
said they
very
had
few.
appeared to you a couple of
Go
times.
ahead. They first of all, in uh, in President Eisenhower's era, that was the United States government's first introduction to ufology in a big way after the Roswell crash, and to beings that were not from Earth, either deceased or alive. It was not until 1971, and there was a treaty signed or an agreement signed. We don't know much about that, but we do know that in 1971, several countries around the world got together and that had been comparing extraterrestrial notes, and they all signed a treaty along with the Star Nation peoples that had attended that desert accord. It was not held in the United States. It was held somewhere in the Middle East, and all we have is images, but not a location. What Tilcom told us is that in that treaty, the Star Nations, agreed no sharing of technology of any kind that Star Nations possess with Earth humans. No photographs, no video. And that treaty was signed for 50 years, beginning in August of 1971. This is what Tilcom told us in 2013. We've been waiting until August of this year, which marked the end of that treaty, so that they were no longer under the restriction of having to avoid cameras, having to avoid video things. And so since the end of August, they have started increasing the sightings around the world, little by little by little. And if you notice, there is more talk of things as far as people, regular old everyday lay people, having sightings of various kinds of craft. So why didn't they allow photographs? Because they were abiding by a treaty that the Ponti, which is the name of the people that Tilcom belongs to, Pontel is the name of the world in Zeta Reticuli constellation or binary system. And when that treaty was done, then they agreed that they would slowly but steadily get Earth humans used to the idea and gauge the reaction. So they have been increasing those sightings from the end of August, when the treaty was done, until now, and will continue until what they call Earth's official first contact, which we expect between now and the beginning of winter.
Are there different races here that might have different craft, like the craft that the Navy has released video of, the Tic Tac?
Yes,
or are they all the same
no,
race?
not at all. The Ponti have identified what their craft looked like and have showed us photographs and images that have been captured of their craft, including ones in front of the Sandia Mountain. So if a craft is oval, bright white, or bright silver metallic looking. No seams of any kind. You can't see rivets, you can't see seams, you can't see doors, you can't see windows. If it looks like a bright white oval and is about the size of a small plane, that's what they call a skipper ship. That's kind of a 6-person
Is that the
sort of
tic-tac
craft.
sort of?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
What you would call a tic-tac, they call a skipper ship. There are larger craft that look more like traditional saucers, but the Ponti also have huge craft that are long cigar-shaped or cylinder shaped with rounded ends, craft that can go into our oceans and withstand the deep depths, or go between the stars. Those craft can be a mile long without any problem.
Big enough to haul oils.
Have you? I've got several questions I'm looking at, and it reminded me to ask you.
Sure.
Do you consider yourself channeling whenever?
No.
Because this person was asking, is
Yep,
this a
it's
psychic?
a fair question. That's a fair question.
Because have you ever heard of the fellow named Bashar who is?
I've heard of that
he is
name. I don't
channeling,
know much
so-
about him, but I have heard of him.
He was the first one that came to mind.
Okay.
So.
My goodness. Okay. So
I think the truck drowned out the language.
Yeah.
That was good timing. But
it was good timing.
Yes, she's clairvoyant. They're having a discussion in the chat. I'm trying to keep up.
That's
with.
all right. So clairvoyant, I know how to channel, but telepathy and channeling are distinguished as different. When you are channeling somebody, they don't have a physical body. They don't have a physical body. If you are in telepathic contact with another individual, they have a physical body. So it's another person talking to you, but instead of using an auditory communication, it's just a mind-to-mind communication.
So you don't have any photographs of their ships or anything like that?
I do.
Oh, no.
I don't know if I can find some or not, or if you go to the very beginning of the video where, you remember the video I showed you that had the tic-tac ship with the peace sign on the front?
Uh-huh.
Go to the first few photos in that right after the title. You'll see one of the Sandia Mountain, and I think the next one right after that
I'm going to bring
looks
that up,
like a
and then you
mountain
can-
background go the very next page.
All right, let me go back to the video. The next
Yep,
page.
that's it. There it
Little
is.
bit-
Keep
little
going.
bit further.
Almost there. Yep, there. See that bright light? That's one of their tic tacs. This is in front of the Sandia Mountain, photographed by a local here in Albuquerque.
Yeah, you can
Now-
kind of see the oval shape there.
On the west side of the mountain, which is what you're seeing here, there is an entrance large enough for one of their tic-tac or skipper ships to get into. The big hangar bay entrance is on the opposite side of the mountain, on the northeast side.
I think I asked you this question over the phone, but you're familiar with the Anjali lady?
Vaguely.
I
She
wondered-
and I
I
have
was
never
asking-
talked and never met, but I know
wonder
of her.
If you all were referring to the same, basically the same beings.
I don't
Or-
think so. I don't get the sense that the individuals that she speaks with are the shorter Ponti nation. I think she is in contact with one of the taller extraterrestrial nations visiting Earth now.
She meant this a mantis style being.
Yes. And a mantis style being is exoskeletal. And exoskeletal means hard on the outside, like you would see an ant or a praying mantis have.
Right.
Larger eyes, usually compound eyes instead of singular lenses like we have.
One of the interesting, and I wanted to get your take on this. One of the other interesting people I've interviewed is Alexei Novitsky, and he has these theories about time and our the way we observe it, right? And he was talking about different beings, even on Earth, having different experiences of time. And I find the whole mantis thing, the praying mantis thing, very interesting because he gave the praying mantis as an example of a being that sees things like, you and I see a fly go shoo, shoot by. Well, the mantis is seeing the fly go by like this, and he just reaches out and grabs it.
Huh. Interesting. I hadn't heard
and
that.
and so it's interesting. I'm in, one of the reasons I'm doing these interviews is I'm trying to put, a lot of different
Oh,
things
yeah.
together that I find very interesting. And
Yeah.
anyway, sorry.
No,
That came
don't
to my mind.
apologize. That's exactly what Otter and I went through also. As we spoke with Tilcom, we needed somehow to talk to other, because we didn't know ufology for nothing. We didn't know. We hadn't read books. We hadn't talked to anybody else who were experiences other than each other. And so we started to ask these same questions that you're asking. And we got lucky. We met a local Native American gentleman who was from the Zuni Pueblo,
Yeah.
the Zuni Native American nation here in New Mexico. Now, the Zuni have a history of positive Star Nation interaction. We didn't know that. We met this gentleman and we started talking about this guy underneath the Sandia Mountain, and he perked up. He said, "Oh, we know about those guys. When they come to see us, usually there's two different nations." And we sat back because this gentleman was taught as a young boy the history of the Zunis and the Pueblo nation interaction with the Star Nations as a positive thing. And so they've met a number of nations, and a number of Star Nations have landed on the Zuni reservation on the border of New Mexico, Arizona area. And so they were very aware that there were nations beneath the Sandia Mountain. That was the first corroboration that we received from somebody local.
I remember a long time ago when I was, a teenager and I started questioning things. I always, for some reason, Native Americans would come to my mind, and I would think, well, all of these stories that they have and these traditions, and we just kind of ignore them as if, you know what I mean? Like our religion
Yeah.
is number one,
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how that works.
Well, I think because it was not in written format, it was in repeated oral format instead of written down, that the European explorers that came over poo-pooed the stories that the Native American tribes had of their history as in lesser than theirs. And what we have come to find out is that legends don't mean fiction. Legends are something that is a huge deal that happened, that was such a big story that it kept being retold and retold and retold, not as a fiction story, but as a teaching story, so that generations down the line wouldn't have to run into the same thing and not know how to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, what I've always found interesting is that, I mean, Native Americans are intellectual beings like us, but somehow we treat them or look at them as if they're inferior when it comes to their belief systems.
And that's silly,
And it's
because their
weird to
belief
me,
systems, frequently their belief systems are based on what the Native Americans learned from the Star Nation people that came down from the sky and taught them. And if you go to the Lakota, up in the northern central plains of the United States, North Dakota, South Dakota area, the Lakota will tell you that their most sacred ceremonies came from a woman who came down from the sky called White Buffalo Calf Woman and taught them their ceremonies. If you go to the Mayan and you read a book called the Popol Vuh, they will tell you that people came down from the sky, landed on the mountaintop, and said, "We're here for exactly 100 years to teach you agriculture, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, but after then, we got to go back home."
I look at the Nazca lines too. I mean, you know,
And so there are
I mean,
indications of a lot of stuff.
yeah, I have a surveyor that helps me with projects, and we have a hard enough time laying out houses on the ground. You know,
Sure.
there are these vast,
Huge
artwork
lines.
that's spread for acres and acres that you can only observe from space, and it's just amazing to me the accuracy and the
Well,
level of detail.
and some of the construction techniques that we see on every continent that we cannot recreate nor explain. What does that tell you? As a contractor, you look at places like Pumapunku or Göbekli Tepe and go, how did they do this? We can't do this. How did they do this? This is not Stone Age technology.
Has the Ponte ever talked about technology with you, or just since that's one of their?
Well, and honestly, because we found it more valuable to learn about their culture, we did not want to quiz them about their technology as if that was more important than them as people. Okay? And so we absorbed technology information as it came up in conversation. And so let me give you, for instance, they talked about the little skipper ships that look like a tic tac, and no windows, no doors, because when they want to land, they have the ability to just plain look through the floor and see what's beneath them. And we had no idea. When they talk about their skipper ships, they talk about them being sentient. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, there's a consciousness inside the ship. It is considered a sentient, alive being. And so instead of a head mechanic running our hangar bay, we have a fleet master who is more like somebody who takes care of a herd of horses, that he all gets to know their personalities and takes care of their health and well-being.
Until radar comes along.
Coincidentally, Alexei Novitsky's in the chat, and he's a really cool guy. He's the fellow that I interviewed before you, and he's more into the physics side of it. And he was asking, he had a question: have you ever been on a craft, and if so, did you see a gold sphere?
I woke up on board a craft in 1999, and I was walking down a ramp following other Earth humans. There were less than a dozen of Earth human people in front of me, and those people were following one of the Ponte, one of the small Zeta body types. When I got to the bottom of the ramp, there was some kind of an opening that looked like a portal, a window. And I stopped and I looked out and I saw the tip of South Africa receding in the background. And I went, gosh, that looks like South Africa. And somebody in my head said it was. And I was still half asleep and turned around to continue to follow because I was at the end of the line. And the other people followed this little Zeta body type individual around the corner and through a doorway and disappeared. And I got to the middle of the room, and this room was backlit in a dull red light. There were stations around the edge of the room that had short Zeta body type individuals seated at them. They ignored me, like people walking through the middle of the room was no big deal. And I stopped and put my hands on my hips when I realized where I was. And I said, will somebody please tell me what the heck is going on here? And I actually had a reptilian-looking individual step forward, and he looked like a 5-foot-tall, snout-like small Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's what I compared it to at the time.
Salamander.
And he spoke to me and told me his name, and it was the first time anybody had ever answered me back. And so that was a turning point for me.
So when you saw South Africa, you were looking out a portal.
I was looking out essentially.
So you were high enough to see the shape of. Okay. You weren't on the ground walking out a portal. Okay.
Nope,
Because in
nope.
my mind, I saw,
Right,
I
right. No,
visualized
I
you
was
walking
looking
down
at
a
a
ramp. I got
porthole
you. I
window.
got
Right,
Yeah.
right. Not portal as in opening to another place.
That's interesting.
Yep.
I have another question here about cultural differences on their planet. Do they have jobs, homes, etc.?
Oh yeah, professions, education. They spend a lot of time in learning about a world that they are going to go then be stationed on before they ever travel to that world. Tilcom told us he spent 2 decades of our time, 20 years equivalent, learning about Earth before he ever arrived here. And then he spent another 4 years on the moon before he set foot in the Sandia Mountain station to take over as manager.
Oh, Alexei, I think I jumped off the craft question too quickly. He was
What's
asking me, was she being taught?
I have been taught all kinds of things. I know that the Earth humans that I was following through this craft were Earth humans that I recognized. And the woman who stood in front of me was Mary. She was from Kansas City. They always picked us up in the same order and always dropped us off back home in the same order. And I always stood behind Mary from Kansas City. And I would recognize her if I ever met her again.
You don't know the complete purpose while you were there?
I don't know all of it. I know that it involved checks on abilities, education, health, that kind of thing. But I don't recall any specific teaching things that occurred on board a craft that I don't remember.
That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because if they're observing us, they're going to be looking for data points, I guess. I mean, I'm making assumptions, but
Sure, yeah.
I'm imagining. Why does she think she was on the craft? Oh, I think did I ask that one?
Yeah, because I woke up on board and I remember it consciously. None of my memories that involve craft or ET, and I can tell you now, I have seen more UFOs receding in the distance than I can count. I went through a period of about 5 years from 98 to 2003 that I had intense experiences. But I've seen Earth human created craft and I've seen extraterrestrial craft. And we learned from the Ponte that if a craft has no seams, no rivets, no external things on the outside like antennae or weaponry or anything like that, it has a greater chance of being ET created, not Earth human created.
Some of the, and I don't know if this is because I was able to interview Louis Elizondo or not, but I keep getting these kind of messages from people that are kind of telling me that we're going to have these leaks that, like, you know, that some of the technology is going to be things that we've developed in the last 50 years based on, I don't know what, they don't really say based on anything, but it's like, you know, propulsion systems, that kind of thing, anti-gravity stuff, all this kind of what we would consider weird stuff, but it's starting to make more sense. There's obviously some sort of paradigm shift here where we're moving from secrecy to disclosure. I mean, that's just my take. I mean, that's what it feels like. I mean, you mentioned even when we first started talking that, you know, the closer we get to some, you know, the end of this year or maybe into the next year, that we should start seeing more information being released. You know, that's what it feels like. Have they haven't told you about any sort of new disclosure or information?
Oh yeah. What they've told us is that a couple of things. The star nations that visit our world, and you have to understand, there are more than just a few of them. They told us themselves that on any given day, somewhere between 75 and 80 separate star nations can be found on Earth. Most of them under the ocean. Most, because we are a water world, because 75% of our world is ocean. Most of the star nations interested in Earth come because of our oceans. Water means life. Life is what they study. Okay? Other water worlds come seek other water worlds. Other terrestrial star nations, meaning walking on land, come talk to other terrestrial nations. So about 25% of the nations that visit Earth are terrestrial and walk on land. Those nations are telling us that our planet is changing very, very quickly. And we are in for what I call a Melevahess. Okay? And a Melevahess environmentally, because we're shifting into an area of the galaxy as our whole solar system moves. We're shifting into an area of the galaxy that is not kind to stars. And so it will affect the health of our sun, which then affects the health of our world. And without going into great detail, there is a potential when the health of our star comes into play that the sun will sneeze at Earth with a huge plasma stream, knock out our magnetosphere, which protects us. And it can be and has been at times in Earth's past been extinction level events. They don't want to see us go through that without help. And so the star nations who have been here before and helped the last time that Earth went through this area of the galaxy, because we rotate around the galaxy, and as we rotate, we go through this nasty patch. And we're heading into it again. You're already seeing the effects of it on our sun. And some of those effects that are coming back to our world are the extreme weather events.
Extreme events, fires, floods, tornadoes,
Right.
hurricanes.
And so those extreme weather events change the habitability of the surface and are just the beginning of what's gone through in the past, in Earth's past, right before the next ice age begins. They used to think ice ages took hundreds and hundreds of years to get started. They no longer think that. They used to think that we had a long period of time before we had to worry. We no longer think that.
Does the date June 21st, 2029 ring a bell for you, Alexei?
They
Just
haven't
like-
spoken about it in detail, Alexa, but what they have said is this solar cycle, and a solar cycle is 11 years. This solar cycle and the one following, while our star, our sun, is going through this area, are some of the most dangerous for our planet. You can see where other stars close to us, namely Alpha Centauri and Barnard star, I believe, have already started to go through this area of the galaxy, and it's affected those stars dramatically. And we've recorded that for 4 years now. Our astronomers have. So we have an idea of the possibilities of things that are coming. They are not certainties. There is not a certainty that we are going through an extinction level event. There is not a certainty that our magnetosphere will get knocked out and all of the plant life will die as a result. That's not a certainty. However, it has happened in the past, and our Star Nation friends are saying, we want you guys to be safe. We don't want you to go through this alone. We have hospital ships lining up on the edge of your solar system right now, and we're here to help you and give you some information if you'll let us.
There's a question, a viral Sharma. Official first contact was scheduled for fall of 2021. Why is it so that 1 month of fall has passed? Blah, blah, blah. In other
No,
words,
fall is not past. We are in fall.
yeah,
Fall
I
is
don't think
not
fall
done
is passed yet.
until
Yeah.
December
December
21st. So we still have more than a month. Now, what
I
we
think
do know is that the star nations don't use our calendars. The Julian calendar that you and I use, Tony, was created several thousand years ago. It's not very old. So the star nations use the equinoxes and the solstices because they don't change with time.
that comment reminds me of a point I wanted to make, honestly, personally, and that is on the internet, there's this culture that is, I call it the debunker culture, that no matter what you're talking about, it has to be debunked, right? It's just a culture. And what I'm trying to get people to do is just put aside your biases and listen to what people have to say. Because if you think nothing is going to happen, you're really in the wrong circles. I've been interested in this genre, whatever it is, since I was 12 years old, and I'm 59. And I can tell you that things are ramping up. There's
Things
some,
are changing. Since you and I
things are
were
changing.
kids,
Yeah.
our weather is very, very different than when you and I were children, and very different than when any of our grandparents, great grandparents, and great great grandparents were children also.
I'm
So
not
it's
even gonna,
changed dramatically.
I'm reading a comment that says complain once fall is over. I'm not even gonna complain once fall is over because I'm just there's too much happening that can't be explained, that you know what I mean. There's just, if you're like you or I, you can feel the shift in the paradigm, whatever that is.
It is. There
you
is a
know
shift. There's
you
there's
know
an anticipation feeling of there's something coming, but we don't exactly know what. But you
yeah.
can feel that there's almost a sense of a tension built up of what else is going to happen.
There's a shift almost daily.
Yep, there is a shift almost daily. Now, one thing I will tell you that's very, very different from anybody else's story about I'm talking to an extraterrestrial. And that is, I'm not the only one. Otter's not the only one. And what happened was this, Tony. Back in 2016, Sandia, or Tilcom, told us that he was going to assign us a telepathy teacher to improve our skills, but also to translate into English a telepathy manual for the layperson. So we spent a year helping our new teacher, whose name was Tani, translate this. And in 2017, on the winter solstice, we published the telepathy manual called Telepathy 101 for free. And it's available to the public for free now in more than 13 languages and more in the works.
Is that the Inviting ET book?
No,
Oh,
it is
okay.
not.
Because I
So-
used that book as the thumbnail. I was going to try to
Right,
show
that's
that.
okay. What happened was once the telepathy manual was published for free, people all over the world began downloading it from the Ponte's website, which is officialfirstcontact.com. So you go to there and you download this PDF file. It walks you through how you can change and go from where you are right now telepathically, whether you're dead as a doornail or you have some skill, and improve on it. But it also taught the layperson the protocols for contact. What do you do if you yourself want to invite the Ponte to come visit you? And it laid out those instructions. People all over the world started in the beginning of 2018, 3 years ago, to follow those instructions and invite the Ponte. They received visits. We have reports from lots and lots of countries, more than 24 countries now. But those lay people who got visits from all over the world started gathering evidence of the visits and supplying it back voluntarily to the officialfirstcontact.com website. So if you go to officialfirstcontact.com, you can go to the evidence page and see what people from all over the world have voluntarily sent us, whether it's a photo of a landing area, swirls in the grass, triangular landing pads, whether it was four-fingered fingerprints on their windows or on their dusty shelves, whether it was the sand that they gathered from their beds. But we also have audio files, 3 separate audio files of the Ponte whispering into microphones. We also have videos of people asking the Ponte to please blink their ship lights and doing it 5, 6, 7 times in a row on request. So what I'm trying to tell you is I'm not the only one who has conversations with Commander Teal'c or some of the other members of his crew. Other people around the world now recognize these individuals from Zeta Reticuli 2 by sight and by name. And it's because the Ponte let us know that while they couldn't, at the time the treaty was still in place, provide any photos, there was absolutely nothing in the treaty that said an experiencer of the Ponte could not draw what they saw. And so that's what they did. They had me draw pictures of them, and I hadn't drawn anybody in 40 years when I began. And so I've had the Ponte, this extraterrestrial nation, as my art teachers.
All of those pictures on your website, you drew all of those, right?
All of them.
Yeah, those are really nice. Let me go back. Let me ask you a question while I'm going back. Let's see. Here we go. I don't know. I'm into all these different kinds. Everything's kind of interesting to me about this.
Yeah.
Right?
What do you want to know?
And one of the things that's interesting to me are the different. And this is one thing that Alexei talks about in his information is the different frequencies that nature operates on. And have they, has any of that type of information come up? Like, what's my question? Sometimes I think if I can just bring up a subject, people will say, "Oh yeah."
Okay. So we understand that different species on our world have different visual spectrum that we cannot see. Like snakes and reptiles can see in infrared. We can't. Mm-hmm. We know that dogs can hear much better than we can and smell much better. So there are animals on our world that have sensory awareness beyond what we have. And the Ponte taught us that we have a fairly narrow visual spectrum, and that there are a number of star nations who have an eyesight spectrum far, far broader, especially at night, than we do. The Ponte's night vision is full color in the dark. So they don't have any problem retracting their lenses and seeing exactly what's going on when all we see is pitch black.
Yeah, Alexei is saying he's referring to flows of space around the center of time.
Oh, well, that's a whole different ball of wax, Alexei.
Alexei, the reason I like Alexei is because I'm hoping some of his intellectual ability will rub off on
Nope.
I don't think so.
We could go into that tangent, but it would take quite a while to go over. And maybe Alexei and I need to have a conversation.
Well, one thing I really wanted to do sometime was have a round table of the different people.
Oh, that'd be
I find
fun.
interesting, and
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, it should be fun. But I think because a lot of the questions I have are not based on evidence, or the need for evidence. They're based on just trying to learn,
trying to understand
how we can observe. Yeah. It's like I bought this camera that was was altered to be able to see 700 to 1200 nanometer wavelength, infrared. It's altered so that it. But I haven't used it yet. I just got it. But so I'm just interested, and I was hearing lately about infrasound.
Mm-hmm.
How different sound waves, how they may um, communicate through
Mm-hmm.
infrasound. Those
And that's
sound frequencies that we can't hear,
that's right.
we're not aware of.
There
And
are species on Earth that use infrasound to stop prey dead in their tracks. Tigers can do that. They have such a low, deep, powerful sound that is below our hearing spectrum that
hypnotizes them.
it will stop their prey where they're standing. Sasquatch have that same capability of infrasound as well. And that's a whole different topic that we got
I was going to
introduced
ask you.
to from
That's
the
funny
Ponte.
that it's funny you brought that up because I don't know why. I grew up in the woods, right? I spent a lot of time. I spent 10 years backpacking on the Appalachian Trail and all kinds of places. I'm more skeptical of Sasquatch than I am the Ponte. Why is that?
Well, all
Why?
right. So here's what I would tell you. If, as a person who walks the woods frequently, if you were taught how to look for the way the Sasquatch leave structures or build structures, leave messages for one another in plain sight, alter things in the environment that you go, oh, well, there must have been a wind and that tree blew down.
No.
Not exactly. You have to learn a little bit more about their culture before you can go, wait a minute. One of the best places that I'm going to steer you to is a YouTube channel called Colorado Bigfoot by Mark Abel and Mark, M-A-R-C. Mark has spent thousands of hours above 9,000 feet documenting structures. And what
I mean, we
he
used to.
shows people makes sense.
Yeah, what we used to do, when I used to do a lot of hunting too when I was younger, and we would see bear sign, where bears have clawed trees, and we would see different sign of animals.
Sure.
We'd see tracks. We'd see all kinds of sign of animals, but I just never ran across. And so I remember when I was a teenager, what's the famous film? Oh, I keep wanting to say Magruder, but that's JFK. Well, the famous film of out west, the very first 8 millimeter projector film of Bigfoot.
Oh,
What?
yes, the Patterson Gimlin
Patterson.
film.
Thank you. I remember the first time I saw that, I was looking at it and I was like, you can't. That seems to be very hard because you can pretty much see any human in a suit and tell that it's, you know what I mean. That was the first realistic thing I had ever seen. Regarding, but I don't know why. Why do I have a harder time? You know what I mean?
Well,
I
all
find
right.
it easier to believe that they came from Zeta Reticuli than.
It's okay. There are things that we get fed, programmed with, instructed with through the media, through our friends, through our family, of what's real and what isn't real. And you and I believe those things until we have a personal experience that makes us go, wait, how does this make sense? In what realm of what I was taught does this piece that I just personally experienced make any sense at all? And that's when we start to question. You had experiences as a teenager. I did too. And it made me go, what I was taught in school isn't the whole picture. I'd like to learn more. And I'm an educated person and I read well and I study well, but I also know how to trust my own senses. And so I started learning things that were outside of the usual 1st to 12th grade information. And when I had personal experiences, I started seeking out other people who had personal experiences. Because I wanted to know if what I saw or experienced was totally out there or if somebody else had seen it too.
Yeah.
And so, just like you, I found interesting people to talk to, and I started listening and learning, because you can tell when somebody's being straight with you. And
The other question about Bigfoot was another. Are they from Earth, another dimension, or what? Are they Native Americans?
okay, so the Sasquatch nations, and there's more than one kind, and they are at more than one level of development. If you think about the difference between us, chimpanzees, and great apes, there's not a lot of genetic difference. We're all in the same kind of family line, if you think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there are nations like that amongst the Sasquatch at various stages of development. But they've been around on this world, according to our friends, since the beginning of the age of great mammals. That's the Neogene period. That's after the dinosaurs died out and the age of mammals began. We went into the age of large mammals, like the saber-toothed tiger and the giant cave bears. That's when the Sasquatch first came about. We're talking millions of years ago, well before you and I ever were developed. And so, are they from Earth? Many are, not all, because some star nations met the Sasquatch nations, realized their sentience, and began taking them places to explore with them. The Sasquatch kind of avoid technology. Kind of like if you think about the Amish, okay? Don't like our level of technology, don't have much time for it. Keeping it simple is where they feel like they live in balance. Sasquatch are the same kind of way, but they've been the stewards.
Skills later on in life.
Yeah, no kidding.
Here's a question.
Are there some from other planets? There are now. Are they transdimensional? Yes, they are.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No,
I'm trying
you're
to
fine.
keep up with questions.
Yeah, keep up. What else we got?
And the questions are all over, so excuse me for that. Is meditation and opening the third eye important for strengthening telepathy?
Yes, it is. When you go into a meditative state, you are in your most receptive state telepathically. Yes.
I have, I didn't really want to talk about my experiences that much because, it's frankly embarrassing. But
It may
I think
not be.
One thing I'm trying to do is get past this. I'm glad, and people wonder why you're just not doing this on your channel. It's because it seems like it's becoming more accepted. Now I may lose projects over this. I may lose, you know what I mean? People may think I'm crazy. And that's fine. I'm 59 now. I really don't care. I want to start slowing down anyway. But when I was younger, I had this experience, and since then, my dreams are different. Like I have normal dreams, but then I have other dreams that are almost like I don't have them until I'm like half awake. Does that make sense? And I don't know the term. In other words, I can have a normal dream, wake up, and say, "Okay, that was a normal dream."
Right.
And so, what's very strange is that sometimes I'm thinking, okay, I want to document my experience, and I'll have my phone beside me, right? And you can ask. My son thinks I'm weird because I'll show him the videos I take. So I'm trying to do this video when I'm half awake, right? And what I see in the phone, like the edges of things are outlined in these sort of weird, almost like an electric-y looking
hue,
out that. But then when I wake up and in the middle of the next day and I look at the video, they aren't the way that I thought I was recording them.
Correct.
So those are kind of the weird things that happen to me, and I don't know why. I don't know.
Okay, so in that halfway awake, halfway asleep state, your brain is slowest when you're in a deep dream state. It kind of putzes along, and when you wake up, your brain wave speed picks up until you're fully awake. When you're partially awake, when you're just kind of still sleepy, kind of dopey before that first cup of coffee sort of time, you're in not a deep dream state, but not an awake state either. You're in what we call an alpha theta state, which is that extremely receptive telepathic state, but also you tend to visually pick up on more detail that you don't normally pick up in your waking state of consciousness. Have you ever heard about young children who see things that aren't there, like ghosts and other beings? Okay. They spend time in that perpetual alpha theta state during play. Okay. They're receptive visually like you are with the phone all the time until they take a nap, and then they go deeper. But because they're in that beginning learning state, their brainwave activity is shifted from our adult brainwave activity, and they're more perceptive. And so when little Johnny points across the room and says, "What's that orange ball in the corner?" and Mommy doesn't see it, and Mommy says, "There's no orange ball in the corner." Well, to little Johnny, there really is. He's not lying. It's just that Mom is in a beta waking state of consciousness where she's not aware of it.
It's really, if somebody wanted to have me committed, they probably could over this stuff. And that's what
I'm there.
That's what worries me about some of these things that we experience, is that there's no doubt that there's something going on behind our waking consciousness. Okay.
Yes.
I have proven that to myself over and over again. I don't even have to be like, nobody has to convince me that there is a distinct difference between normal dreams and the things I experience. They're just night and day, pardon the pun, but it's just, and what led me to this, it's the outline you see bluish or purplish. It's weird because, how do you explain it? It's like as if it's not neon, but it's kind of
shimmery.
It's shimmery. It's almost like it has an electrostatic feel to it, right? And it's like I'm thinking, oh, I'm capturing this on video, and then
and it didn't catch.
And
it,
I'm not totally dreaming, because I actually literally have video, have the videos I can show to you. But
your memory sees different, right?
My brain is seeing something that the phone is not.
That's right.
Picking up.
That's right.
So it's very bizarre to me. And so I'm going to start sleeping with this camera.
That's not a bad idea. And here's why. Our Ponte friends say that if you have night vision equipment or full spectrum equipment, and you get the urge, the nudge, if you were, the telepathic prompting, maybe, to go outside and quick take a picture of the sky, your chances of picking up things that your eyes do not see are much greater. We know from people who have done night vision camera work here in the Albuquerque area that when you use a regular telescope and look at the horizon and don't see anything, you think, oh, well, there's nothing to photograph tonight. But if you take the night vision camera and put it on the telescope, suddenly there are 4 or 5 things that are there that you didn't see before. And so the Pontes say if you have full spectrum or infrared night vision equipment, your chances of catching not only their ships, but themselves as individuals are much greater. So I guess I would say listen to those inner promptings, and if you ever have something that says, hey, go outside right now and take a picture of the sky.
Well, it's funny because I just got this camera and I can't wait to use it. It is a full spectrum. In other words, it sees the spectrum of light that we can, or it detects the spectrum of light that we can see, but it sees also, I think it's near infrared, where it's 700 to 1200 nanometer scale infrared. So I don't know. That's the best I could do on this budget.
I think
I
that's a
couldn't
good
afford
idea.
a true FLIR camera was really expensive.
Yes.
But
Yeah, we don't have one either.
um, but I'm hoping
Yeah.
to at least I can record with this one.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the FLIR equipment that you buy doesn't actually take video. I've did a lot, done some research on this, and to get one that actually does really nice video is $5,000 or $6,000.
Yes.
So.
I understand the dilemma.
But anyway, let me see if I've got more questions. Opinions. The open mind displaces personal woo moment. Okay, question please. Opinion on phrase. Oh, opinion on phrase. The open mind displaces personal woo moment. Oh, yeah, moment.
Well,
I
I'm
don't.
not quite sure what they're referring to there. The open mind displaces.
They may
The
be
open
referring to
mind
something
is.
I said earlier, where
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to get. I call this series sort of a mainstreaming series of where I'm trying to get people like me to open their minds up more
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
accepting. Just don't be judgmental. Just take the data, and as it comes to you, it will either make sense or it doesn't. A lot of
Yes.
the things I hear make sense to me, but I don't understand them necessarily. And that's why I'm
Correct.
doing these interviews with you and Alexei and Louis Elizondo and Chris Lato. All of these people have different skill sets that I want to try to learn something from.
We say to people, please keep your skepticism and discernment completely intact. You will need it. Please do not but realize that you may be seeing and experiencing something that's new to you that you've never heard about, never been taught about, and don't be judgmental thinking, gee, I know all about this when it's brand new. It's time to put the skepticism and discernment to work, learning about the new thing instead of dismissing it.
Right. What we have to understand too is Danny Quill in the comments that just because you listen to one person, and it doesn't mean that person has, and I'm not talking about you, uh, because there are a lot of people who have received information in their mind that they are not necessarily uh, translating properly or
Correct.
giving being able to mirror that information to other people so it comes across differently to you than it did to them.
And
And I don't.
that's very true.
uh,
And coming across trying to explain an unusual thing that happened to you. I remember the first time I had an electrical contractor talk to me about his near death experience. And he said, I had the weirdest thing happen. And I sat back because I'd never heard this kind of a story before. But what he said was he was working up on a high wire, and the moment he touched the wire accidentally, he got this 10,000 volt jolt go through him. In that split second before he went unconscious, he was very aware that the electrical wave that was going through his body had 3 different components moving at 3 different speeds. He survived the incident, he got rescued, but from then on, his whole body and his brain reacted differently than before this huge electrocution that he went through. After I heard that story, then I had another gentleman tell me that he got electrocuted. And without knowing the first gentleman, he told me the same kind of thing. So we've talked since to people who were struck by lightning. And they all say, after this electrical jolt that I got, my brain worked different and I could perceive things that I couldn't perceive before. And they scared the piss out of me because I didn't know what to make of them. So
Yeah,
how is it that a half a dozen people have the same story about the same unusual phenomena?
Yeah, I was building a log cabin once with a metal roof, and we had a lightning strike a tree next to us. And the experience was it sent shards flying all over the place. We got down when we got down on the ground when we got our minds settled. There were all these sharp pieces of wood sticking up in the ground. It's a very violent
Wow.
explosion. Now, as it happened, there seemed to be like a glow, and then a boom,
Yes.
and then almost like a sucking in of space.
Yes.
And then all that seemed to me took longer than when I look at lightning flashes at a distance. It's like, faster than that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the experience that we went through seemed to take longer than that.
Yes.
So it happened, and here's wood flying everywhere, and we're on the roof, and we're stunned, and we're looking at each other, and we're like, okay, we're going to get off the roof now, because there was no storm. It was just this.
It just was
The
boom.
lightning just came over we were on top of a mountain, and it had just come over the edge of the mountain, and here it is, boom, no warning at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got down and we were thinking about it, and we were like, wow, that was a long period of lightning. It was like, and it wasn't like, it was very bizarre. I'm just going to tell you. So I kind of feel like when you experience something like that firsthand, and Alexei was talking a bit about this, how you can go into different frames of reference, or you experience time differently. I'm not sure if lightning, that being that close to it, can put you in some sort of different state, but we
Okay.
experienced something strange about that.
You're not the only one to use the idea that time suddenly changed its pace and slowed down, because people who've experienced car accidents, people who have experienced lightning
Yeah.
strikes, people who have had something really unexpected that caused an instantaneous surge of adrenaline through their body, all describe the slowing down of time. The perception of time.
Alexei mentioned fast gamma state from DMT release.
I have no idea about all of that.
Well, I guess our body can produce certain amounts of DMT, I guess, right?
I guess it
Alexei?
can.
And
Yeah.
maybe from that kind of shock or experience, you
And
get this.
you know what? He may be right about that. I can understand. I do know that the brain chemistry and the body's physiological chemistry, almost in a blink of an eye, alter dramatically. And that's that surge of adrenaline that gives people superhuman strength. And we've heard those
Yeah.
stories since we were kids.
Yeah, the automobile accident thing is funny. It's not funny. I rolled a van over and over down this.
Ooh. Oh, hon.
It was the most easy roll I've ever taken in an automobile. I leaned over and was going down and around this curve, and there was some ball fields there, and there was about a 15-foot embankment. Slow.
Uh-huh.
You know how they would do the hillside. And I leaned over to pick up my wallet, and I dropped it, and I looked up, and all of a sudden the van's going over, and it was that slow motion thing.
Yes.
You're watching this because I was looking out the windshield, slow, and the guys who I was following to lunch got out and came back, and I was trying to the van ended up on its side. So they helped me open the door and get out, and then we just pushed the van over. And I
Wow.
was able to drive it home, but I wasn't able to explain it to my wife why it had all these crinkles, and it was a Ford Aerostar van. And
Oops.
I don't know. I think I've lost 2 wives over through some of the experiences that I've had, but I'm sure being crazy didn't help. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on
No, you're
tangent,
fine.
but I
You're
was just
fine.
trying to say, that experience of how we experience time seems strange.
Can change. That's right.
Yeah.
It certainly can. And we hear that over and over from people who do not know each other, who went through similar experiences. And so I say, if you experience something once, well, that's an interesting thing. If you experience it twice, you start to pay attention. If you experience it a third time, then suddenly 3 times in a row is not an accident. and I start saying, that's not a coincidence. What is it? And that's when I start reaching for any other information I can about whatever the topic is and learning as much as I can to try and make sense of it.
Mateo wants to know, what can we expect for the near future? That's kind of a,
Regarding what?
I guess, regarding disclosure or ETs, or
Bye,
you
Lexi.
talked a little bit about the scary
Things that are
stuff.
coming, yeah.
Great.
So, what can we expect in the future? I think the first thing that we're hoping is that we will continue to see an increase in sightings and finally an introduction to our Star Nation neighbors that are friendly. I think that's the next thing that at least they've told us that they are planning. And so we're not in charge of official first contact. They're not in charge of official first contact. But we understand that there is a group of Star Nations who have been keeping our world protected from negative influences for thousands of years now.
One question just came to me,
Yeah.
and it's an awareness of this thing where you see on the internet a lot of, why does America think they're so special? Why, that we have these star nations and we get all these sightings, and what they're alluding to is that we all have mental problems, or that we're so arrogant that we get to have the capital of the star nation in the Sandia Mountains.
I tell you what, moving down to New Mexico and experiencing what I've gone through since 2013, if you had told me 10 years ago I would be doing this now, I would have said you're nuts. I did not expect this, but once I recognized that we truly were speaking with somebody not from Earth, and that person was providing information that got corroborated multiple ways, and that what they were telling us was honest and it worked, not only for Otter and I, but for people all over the world. And that those people all over the world were also gathering evidence that they were talking to the same people that we were talking to. Then I went, okay, this is very different. This is new. And what they're telling us is important. And they asked, believe it or not, they learned that we had something called social media. And they asked for an account so that they could teach. And that's how we happened to get onto Twitter. And because Commander Tilcom requested it. Otherwise, I was not on Twitter. I wasn't. I didn't even know how to open an account.
Is that one Twitter account or several? Is that just, which one is it?
At Sandia Wisdom.
Oh, Sandia Wisdom. Okay.
Or Sandia the ET on Twitter. And then their website is officialfirstcontact.com.
Sandia Wisdom?
At Sandia Wisdom, all one word.
Okay. I wanted to type it into the... If somebody wanted to follow that on Twitter, because I do, and it's interesting.
Yep. And believe it or not, you can talk to the gang live. Normally they get on sometime between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. Mountain Time. That's when the skipper ships have all returned back from whatever nightly missions they have. And sometimes you will hear from them from 4:30 to 5:30 or 6 in the late afternoon when they have a shift change again. And so those are the two times, because they're nocturnal, naturally. They sleep during the day, most of them, and are awake at night. And so my sleep schedule has kind of gone wonky after meeting them, because if I get up at night for a drink of water, they want to talk.
I wonder. I think I asked you this during our first phone conversation, and I forgot exactly what you said. But how did they choose who they are going to communicate with, or is it just
Oh
is it
yeah,
based?
we asked that one of the first things, and what they told us was really simple. They said we ping or contact telepathically a lot of people. Ping is the shorthand term. So we ping a lot of people, but very few people respond and respond without fear and ask us anything back, and you did. And it was just the way you would start a normal conversation with a new neighbor. That's all I did. Is they said something and I responded back, and talking began, just like you meet a stranger. No different. Most people, most earth humans, if they hear a voice in their head, they've been taught so long that the only choice that might be possible if somebody hears a voice in their head is either they're delusional or they are schizophrenic. Those are not the only choices. I'll tell you that right now. And so once you get past that, if you hear a voice in your head and you're not sure who it's coming from or where it's coming from, and it sounds friendly, say hello back. Still keep that skepticism and discernment intact, but don't you want to learn who's talking to you?
Explore.
Yeah, explore. That's what Otter said. Explore. Don't be afraid to explore. You can always shut it down anytime, but you aren't going to learn something by never responding.
One of the things that I sometimes forget is that I'm deaf in my left ear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm for some reason I can hear very well with just one ear, and but sometimes I'm reminded when I watch videos and they've taken the audio in mono or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
for some reason that it always comes through the left channel, and I'm like, there's no audio in this video, and then I go, oh wait a minute, and I turn my headphones around, right? Well, one of the bizarre things about that is that that kind of a bony part behind your
Mm-hmm.
ear.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I get vibration through my headphone that's not normal sound, I hear through that vibration in my
Interesting.
and I started doing research on it, and there's actual headgear you can buy that sends that sound through the
Mm-hmm.
vibration through that bony area, and you can literally hear it.
Mm-hmm. That's
Okay.
right.
So now, if I hear strange noises, that's normally and sometimes I'll hear a little digital voice, like a little
Mm-hmm.
digital voice. Now, people are really going to think I'm crazy now, and I haven't actually ever shared this before. But I promise you, I'm not crazy. I am deaf in my left ear. I have been that way since I was 12, since this period I'm talking about. Deaf ear. They tried to put tubes in my ears to fix it. Didn't work.
No.
Nothing worked. I've been deaf in that ear since I was 12. Okay, so it's not a conspiracy. It's just the way it is. I've been tested millions of times over the years. Yes, I'm deaf, but if I had sometimes when I'm wearing, it's just and this is what I'm trying to get across to people. Some things are physical, and they're not weird. They're not strange, right? We can be communicated through, and this is really the reason I brought this up. Different what are we going to call them, beings or cultures or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
can communicate with us through different means that
Mm-hmm.
we have the ability to be communicated with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I can't hear in my left ear but I can feel sound, and I can do it through sound through that bony part of my ear, you can look that up. Okay, I'm not crazy. um then then so be it. You have to be open to different techniques of communication is all. It's really the point I was trying to make. I know
Right.
that was a long roundabout point, but
But it's a good point because you emphasize the fact that different individuals or different species or different nations hear in different manners, whether that's different frequencies or different methodology that we don't maybe understand at the beginning, we still can accept the fact that they are hearing something, and maybe hearing more than we can. We don't know until we ask them. And so nobody would have let me know that you were deaf in your left ear and how you could hear in that ear until you told me. So that's natural to you. Okay, I accept that. That's your truth. That's fine. So if another species says, this is how I hear or this is how I see, that's different than you, I can accept that. That's their truth also. So we just have to stay open to learning that our way of being and experiencing our physical reality is not the only way out there. Isn't it kind of cool to learn other ways?
And what's interesting about that, and I found this website that has that type of gear that you can hear through I guess they're called vibrational hearing aids.
Bone conduction
Bone
hearing aids.
conducting, thank you. So that bony thing I'm telling you about is where that you can send that vibration, and if the vibration is correctly done, then you can hear. But here's what's bizarre about it. Okay, it makes you feel like you are crazy, right? And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I want people to maybe get around this idea that just because we're talking about things, we're crazy, right? We're not. People aren't crazy, and you'll soon find out that there are other things in life that if you just don't know about them, that doesn't mean they're not real. It just means that you're not aware of them, right? So I wasn't aware of these hearing aids that you can get. And now I know that I'm not crazy, because when I hear that little digital, the strange part about it is, unless you are aware of it, your personal, like that's a personal thing I wasn't aware of, right?
Right.
Well, the first time I heard that, it's so obvious that the sound is not coming through your ear. It feels like it's coming through the back of your head.
That's right.
And
That's
it makes you feel crazy. And so I had to do some research and find out.
Right.
And that I'm not, and I just want people, I don't know what I'm trying to say is that we're entering an age where people really need to open their minds a little more and quit being so judgmental of other people who've had different experiences.
Yeah, just because it's different doesn't make it fiction or untrue. It means that they had an experience you didn't have. And so sometimes if I hear something that's even way out there for my experience level of the paranormal world, instead of making a judgment on it, I'll just kind of put it on a shelf in the back of my head going, wow, that was really interesting. I've never heard that before. And I start nosing around to see if I can find anybody else with a similar experience. If I find 2 or 3 people, then I go, really? That's kind of cool. And I put it into the realm of possible instead of unknown. I can give you a case in point about a very unusual star nation. And I had a very good friend of mine have an experience that she couldn't explain. And what she described was a very large bubble that was semi-see-through, about the size of a medicine ball, float in the air about 30 yards in front of her, stop, stay there against the wind, and then leave floating against the wind as it exited. And she stared at this thing and could not understand what she was seeing. It was daylight. It was fall. And she even turned off the riding lawnmower that she was on at the time to try and see if this thing made a sound, and it didn't. And I had never heard of such a thing. And she said, what was it? And I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was not until I spoke with another Star Nation person, experiencer person, who had done research all over the world. And I said, have you ever heard of anything like this? He said, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We call them the oily bubble people. I said, what? He said, yes. There is a deep ocean aquatic nation that is intelligent, that is amorphic. I said, what's amorphic? He said, it doesn't have a particular shape it maintains. It's fluid like a bubble is.
That's what
Let's see, we
And
got. I'm sorry. Go
so
ahead.
it wasn't until I spoke with him and he said, we have other people that have witnessed these amorphid oily bubble people
they've had some.
and said, had some interaction with them. And so it took 20 years between the first description and the second description of the same phenomena that I went, really? So sometimes you have to put things on a shelf for a long time before you get corroboration.
Here's another question. Do they have any kind of sickness, health related, like cancer, the things that we suffer from? That was the question.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can they get sick? Oh yes. Can they be injured to the point of, say, brain injury that they don't recover from? Yes. Can they get burned? Oh yeah. They are physical beings that are genetically not a whole lot different than us. They refer to other nations that are bipedal with 2 arms, 1 head, walk on land. Those terrestrial nations are all variations on the human theme. And so the Ponti consider themselves a variation of human. They say we are Earth human. They are Pontel human. If you're from one of the Orion constellation worlds, then that's the kind of human you are. Whether you are 20 feet tall or 2 feet tall, if you're bipedal and have our kind of 2 arms, 2 legs, and head body type, it is considered a variation on or a cousin to human beings. We are not the only body type like this in our area of the galaxy at all.
Jim Smith says the ancient astronaut theory is the key. I guess that's a statement, not a question.
Yeah, I guess it is. And Jim would have to elaborate as to what he thinks or has been taught what the ancient astronaut theory is. But the truth is that we are not the first age of man to walk on our world. How do we know? Well, we have ruins that we can't explain and we can't recreate, and we don't know how they were constructed, but they're here.
Let's see.
Where did they come from?
And I too wonder. So let's see. When people pray, are the telepathic visitors obliging the people with replies? In other words, are answers to prayer the people rely on to perpetuate religion simply from ETs?
No, not at all. If you pray and you're praying to God, or you're praying to Jesus Christ, or you're praying to Buddha, no matter who you're praying to, the Ponti would consider it rude to answer as if they were that person. Because you're not talking to them, you're talking to someone else.
To a
And
spiritual entity.
they have a very, very, very polite society. When you are a telepathic nation and you hear everybody's thoughts, you have to have societal rules. And politeness is one of those. So when you pray to your creator, that's who you're praying to and you're talking to, not an ET nation. If you're praying, or if you're talking to the Ponti, then likely you aren't necessarily praying to them. You might be praying about them. Please take care of them. But they don't claim to be gods, demigods. They just tell us they're people.
I have a feeling that there's there's a creator that's even above their level.
There is.
That's the way I look at it. Because when I had my experience when I was very young, I was brought up in the church, and I started questioning, things. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm just gonna go with the flow. I'm not gonna question. I'm just gonna live and see what happens. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
you can't. Humans aren't privy to enough information that we can make a judgment based on who created us and all that, right?
that's right.
So the main thing is that we need to learn how to treat each other.
Yes,
I think living by
yes.
the golden rule is really what the creator wants us to do.
Treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a big part of it.
If you, no matter what your spiritual or religious belief system is, if you are in a loving community that bases its decisions on love, not hate, and if that community supports you for who you are as a person, you've found a good basis to start to live by. Unconditional love is the one thing that is shared amongst all of these various spiritual belief systems all over our planet. And again, if you find that it's love-based and it's supportive of who you are in a good way, and their actions are what I call right-minded, not wrong-minded, then you've found a good basis to start with. It doesn't mean that you can't change or that you won't develop from there. But I think that those are my criteria for a good place to get started.
It's a good place to start in the primer.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, self-honesty.
We'll let the Reverend have the last word.
That sounds good. Thank you very much for having us on.
See, that was one of the most
appreciate
fun
it.
conversations I've had in a long time. It's funny when I interviewed
Out
Will
there.
Elizondo, I was so nervous when I interviewed him because he was ex-CIA and I was really nervous. I haven't been nervous around you, and I appreciate you for
Oh,
making it easy to interview you.
we try and just be honest and say, okay, we had this unusual thing happen to us, but it's developed into something amazing and unprecedented. And we couldn't keep it to ourselves anymore because it was too important. And so we began to share. And all we can do is share with as much right-minded honesty as we possibly can. And that's the way Otter and I live now.
Well, maybe I can have you back sometime when I learn
Anytime.
more, and I can have a better conversation.
Sure, no problem.
Or I can have a more intelligent conversation.
No, you did fine. You did fine, and you'll have a lot to digest, and you'll think of 1,000 questions after we get off the air. We'll save them for next time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Sue. I appreciate it so
Next time
much.
I'll come jerk on
You
the
are
show.
very, very welcome. I'm going to leave you with a parting phrase that our Ponte friends have given us when they say goodbye to one another. And that is, wear your day with ease.
I just had a smooth feeling pass over my body.
Wear your day with
A
ease.
soothing feeling.
A soothing feeling. There you go.
Soothing feeling.
All righty. I'll let you
Right.
go. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
sir.
Sue. I appreciate
Take care.
it.
All right.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.